everyone, welcome to the Jayda and Stitches show. Recently, I have been repainting some of our older wooden furniture, and I got this piece done. It's all in white, and I like it so much I don't want to risk damaging the top of it when I, bang various things down on top of it. I can be a little rough sometimes. I have pitchers and teapots and all sorts of plates and everything that I like to sort of put on the sideboard from now and again, and I want to make sure that I don't chip the paint. So I felt that this was the perfect excuse to make a new table runner or a runner for the sideboard. So that's what we're going to do today, and we are going to use 24/7 cotton by Lion Brand Yarns. We'd like to thank Lion Brand for sponsoring today's video. 24/7 cotton is a 100% mercerized cotton yarn. It is a size 4 weight. It comes in a whole bunch of beautiful colors, and we have made a lot of projects here on the channel with the 24/7 cotton. It is great to wear, but it also makes really nice decorative pieces like this new table runner. Today's project uses the open shells and picot stitch, which, if you made the Victorian Stitch Sampler Calendar Blanket along with us, you'll recognize as the June stitch. It's beautiful, it makes a pretty blanket, but it also makes a very delicate little side table piece. I love it for its lacy, kind of old school effect, and also the kind of the diamond shape that it gets. The number of chains you put in your foundation row will determine the width, and the number of rows you repeat will determine the length. So you can customize this pattern to make placemats or table runners or even blankets any size you like. And I do have the actual stitch formula for you. We'll mention it when we get into the tutorial, and I'll also include it in the description box too, in case you need a quick reference. So without further ado, let's grab a very pretty ball of 24/7 cotton by Lion Brand. We'll grab our hooks, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we will stitch ourselves up a new summertime table runner together. In order to make our summertime table runner, I'm using 24/7 cotton by Lion Brand. This is a size 4 medium weight 100% mercerized cotton. It's in the colorway Aqua, and there are about 170 meters or 186 yards in a skein. I'll be using most of this ball for today's project. You're going to want a pair of scissors, a yarn needle. You might find a measuring tape very handy if you're going to be making this for a specific location. And I'm using a 5.5 millimeter hook. This is also known as an eye or a 9. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. This pattern can be made over a foundation chain row that's any multiple of 8 plus 2 extra chains on the end for turning. And the foundation chain row determines the width of your table runner. The rest of the pattern, so row by row by row, determines the length. So width is determined by the foundation chain. For today's pattern, we're going to begin with a slip knot, and I'm chaining 34. 34 is a multiple of 8, that's 32, plus 2 chains for turning at the end. Once you've chained 34, or a multiple of 8 plus an extra 2 at the end, we are going to use the open shells and picot stitch. So here we go. We are going to skip the first chain from the hook and single crochet into the second chain. We're going to chain 1. We're going to skip the next 3 chains, and into the next chain we're going to work our first open shell. We're going to double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and chain 1. So that's double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. That is an open shell. We're going to skip 3 chains, and into the next chain we're going to work a picot. We're going to single crochet, chain 3, and into the same chain, single crochet. Single crochet, chain 3, single crochet is a picot for the purpose of this pattern. Chain 1, and then we start all over again. Skip 3 chains, find the next chain, and we're going to work an open shell. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and chain 1. That chain 1 is not so much part of the open shell as it is the spacer in between the picot and the open shell. So there's a little chain 1 in between picots and in between the open shells. Skip 3 chains, find the next one, and we work a picot. Single crochet, chain 3, and into the same chain, single crochet. Chain 1, and start again. Skip 3 chains, find the next one, work an open shell. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. Skip 3 chains, find the next one, and work a picot. Single crochet, chain 3, single crochet. Skip 3 chains, and now it's time for an open picot. Oh, don't forget to chain 1. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. And that brings us all the way across to the end. If you're making a longer foundation chain, you're just going to keep repeating this, but the last motif you make will be an open shell on your row 1 or your odd rows. That leaves you with 4 chains. You're going to skip 3 and you're going to single crochet into the last chain. That is the entire foundation row. Row 1 and row 3, in fact all odd rows are relatively the same. You will have 1 more open shell than you have picots. In this case, we have 4 open shells and 3 picots at the end of row 1. For row 2, and every even row, we begin by chaining 4 and turning into that same stitch where you chained 4 out of. You're going to work a double crochet and a chain 1. And this chain 4 counts as a double crochet, chain 1, and then double crochet, chain 1 built into the same place gives you a half an open shell. So row 2 and all even rows begin with a half an open shell. You're going to skip to the middle of the next open shell, which is this double crochet right here, and into that you're going to work a picot. Single crochet, chain 3, single crochet, and chain 1. Always remember the chain 1s. They are always in between our little motifs. So single crochet, chain 3, single crochet into the same place, which is the middle stitch of that open shell from the previous row, chain 1. Now you're looking for the chain 3 space from the previous row, which is in between the picot, and you're going to work an open shell into it. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. So all open shells are worked into the chain 3 space, which was the picot from the previous row. Find the next open shell, look for the middle stitch, and work a picot into it. Single crochet, chain 3, single crochet, and chain 1. That little chain 1 acts as a spacer. Picots are built into the center stitch of the open shell. The next thing is a picot, which means you have to build an open shell. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and repeat. If it's an open shell from the previous row, it gets a picot. If it's a picot, it gets an open shell, and so on. I'll catch up with you at the end of the row. The last thing you do in a row 2 or an even row is a picot in the middle stitch of the open shell from the previous row. So single crochet, chain 3, single crochet into the same stitch, chain 1, don't forget that last chain 1, and then at the end of the row you skip out until you find the single crochet that began a single crochet begins and ends every odd row. So find that single crochet, and into it you're going to work a half an open shell. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So your even rows begin with chain 4, which counts as a double crochet, chain 1, and then into that same place you work a double crochet, which is the half a picot, and then you chain 1 because you need a chain in between every single little motif. So there's a chain in between all of your open shells and picots, or your picots and your open shells. And of course you begin and end with a half an open shell. You still want that chain 1 in between. So that's your even row. Let's do row 3 together. It's the odd row. We're going to chain 1 and turn. Odd rows all begin with a single crochet. So into the top of that last stitch, you're going to single crochet and chain 1. Remember, the chain 1 is needed because there's always a chain 1 in between motifs, and that little single crochet is kind of like half a picot stitch. The first thing you come to is a full picot from the previous row, which was even. So if it's a picot, it needs an open shell. Right into that chain 3 space, we work double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and chain 1. That chain 1 is the little spacer. The next thing we come to is an open shell from the previous row. We find the middle stitch and we work a picot into it. Single crochet, chain 3, single crochet back into the same stitch, and remember, before you leave, chain 1. Then the next thing, it's a picot, so it gets an open shell, and so on. I'll let you work across row 3 and I'll catch up with you at the end. As you near the end of an odd row, in this case row 3, the last full thing you do will be an open shell, and then you're confronted with the end of an even row, which is that half an open shell, or the chain 4 double crochet that began. So skip the double crochet, skip the first chain, find the top of the third chain of those 4 turning chains, and single crochet into it. So odd rows begin and end with a single crochet. They have 4 open shells and 3 picots, or depending on how wide you made it, you will always have 1 more open shell than you have picots in an odd row. Even rows begin with chain 4 double crochet and they end with double crochet, chain 1 double crochet. It's that half an open shell. You will have 4 picots and 3 open shells, or depending on how wide you made it, you will always have 1 more picot than you have open shells on an even row. Remember that you always want a chain 1 in between all of your motifs, whether it's a half an open shell or a half a picot. Always make sure there's a chain 1 in between. That gives it its nice little bit of distance and that lovely bit of lacy spacing. You want to repeat this pattern now for as many rows as you need for the length. So the row repetition determines the length of the piece. You want to end on an odd row. Very important that you want to end on an odd row, because we began with an odd row, we want to end on an odd row. That's just how it's going to make this piece work out for us. I will be working until I get to row 45, because I'm aiming for an overall length that is 32 inches, but that's after we add the border. Remember, the border always adds a little bit of length to the top, bottom, and a bit of width to both sides of the piece you're working on. When you finish an even, or I should say an odd row, you immediately want to go to an even row. Even rows begin with a chain 4, turn, and a double crochet in the same stitch. That's considered half an open shell. Don't forget, there's always a chain 1 before you leave. If you're looking at an open shell, that means that it's time for a picot in the middle. Chain 1. If you're looking at a picot, it means it's time for an open shell. And chain 1. Always remember your little chain 1s. So, even row, odd row, even row, odd row. You can do that on repeat until your piece is as long as you want. If you're making something like little placemats, then Make note of how many rows you did in the first one so that you can easily follow that up to make multiples of the same thing. But you can repeat this pattern as many times as you want. Just make sure you end on an odd row. For my place, I will be working until I get to the end of row 45. That will fit my needs. So I will see you at the end of row 45. I have now completed 45 rows in my summertime table runner. As soon as you have made your piece as long as you want, any number of rows you like, but remember you want to end on an odd row, that's the row that begins and ends with a single crochet, it's now time to add the border. We're going to continue with the open shell and picot stitch around the other 3 edges of our piece, meaning that the last row that you work also kind of doubles as the first row or the first edge of your border. So we don't actually end up having to work back across the top of the last row of the table runner. We are going to continue right from where we finished that row with a single crochet, and we're going to actually turn that single crochet into a full-on picot. So you single crochet in the top of that 3rd chain, just like you would when you're finishing any other odd row, but instead, to begin the border, we're going to chain 3, single crochet back into the same place to complete that full picot. Chain 1 and rotate so that you are looking down the first long edge of your table runner. This picot is kind of worked into the edge of this first even row. You're using a piece of it. So you're just going to ignore this first even row and you're just going to focus now on the even rows that go down the side. And now the even rows are the ones that have a chain 3 at the edge. So on this side it's a chain 3, on the other side it's a double crochet. You are skipping all the little odd rows, which is the single crochet edge, and you're only looking for the even rows. You're going to work right around the chain 3, or in the case of the other side, the double crochet. You don't have to split any stitches, you're going to work right around it. And we're going to continue. So if we just finished with an open, or I should say a picot, we want to do an open shell next. So directly around that chain 3 stitch, you're going to do an open shell, which is double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and chain 1. So same old little open shell, worked all the way around that chain 3, so you don't have to split the stitch. Skip the single crochet, which is the odd row edge, and just find the next one. This one, however, we just did an open shell, means that we've got to do a picot. So into that, still working around the stitch, single crochet, chain 3, single crochet, and chain 1. So you're only looking for the chain 3 even row edges. You are continuing to work the exact same pattern of an open shell, and then a picot, and then an open shell, and then a picot. You're skipping all the odd rows because they're just too small to bother with. And you're just looking for the next chain 3. You're working around the whole thing, and you're going to repeat the little picot, open shell, all the way down, just working around those chain 3s that are the edge of the even rows. And that will take you all the way down to your foundation chain row, and that is where I will catch up with you next. That's the familiar little pattern now, worked all the way down the first edge. The last thing you do when you get near the bottom is work an open shell in the edge of what was row 2, or that first even row, and then you've got your foundation chain. In fact, you might even still have your little tail here hanging off the edge of that first foundation chain. We are going to work a picot into that. So single crochet right into that first foundation chain, chain 3, single crochet, and single crochet, or I should say chain 1 to finish. You're going to rotate your work, so now that we're working across the entire foundation chain row, and this is pretty self-explanatory. You've just made a picot. So the next thing you want to do is an open shell, and you're going to work that open shell in what is the bottom of the open shell that you first come to. So we work double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, Then you're looking for the bottom of the next picot, and you work a picot into that. So you're kind of creating mirror image motifs in the bottom edge of whatever was there, worked across that foundation chain row. So you get kind of a neat star pattern effect going. So open shell in the bottom of an open shell, picot in the bottom of a picot. Don't forget there's always a little chain one in between your motifs, and you're going to work that all the way across to the other end of the foundation chain row. The last thing you do will be an open shell in the bottom of an open shell. Then you've got 3 chains to skip, and you're looking for that foundation chain that is in the very bottom of what was the single crochet that began row 1. You're going to work a picot into that. So single crochet, chain 3, single crochet, and chain 1. And that is all built into the underside of what was the single crochet that began row 1. You're going to rotate your work. You are now working up the other side of your table runner, and it's exactly the same thing that we did on the way down. So the next thing you're going to do is an open shell. If you're confused, just look across. You're looking for that first even row, that's row 2, and you're still working all of your pieces, your motifs around the double crochet. So don't be confused by the little single crochet, that's the odd row. You're looking for the double crochet of the even row. If you get lost, just pause, take a look across the row, and make sure that you are doing the same motif directly opposite the other one. So for example, there is my open shell. If I go right across the row, I see where I need to put my other one. This would mean it's a single crochet. The single crochets are always going to be smaller than your double crochets, even if your tension's a little loose on one side versus the other. You're looking for the double crochet, not the single crochet. So single crochet is smaller, double crochet is bigger. And it's the same pattern. You work an open shell, then you work a picot. You skip the odd rows, which begin and end with a single crochet. See, there's a single crochet. You want the double crochet. And if you worked a picot in the last row edge, you work an open shell in the next row edge. And these motifs will be exactly opposite the same motif that you did up the other side, or down the other side, I should say. So you should still be open shell, picot, open shell, picot, open shell, picot, all the way up, and it will mirror exactly what you did over here on this side. So you can go ahead, work away at that. Remember, you're only looking for the even row edges. You're working the exact same pattern, and I will catch up with you up at the top. The last thing you do will be an open shell in the second last even row edge, remembering that as we get up to the top, there's that single crochet that we made into the top of the last even row edge, and we're skipping that even row edge just like we did on the other side, because technically our single crochet is sort of built into the top of it. So we are going to complete that picot. We're going to single crochet into the same place that the first single crochet of our last row of the table runner was made, chain 3, and slip stitch to join in the top of that single crochet. And that is it. You can fasten off. Take a moment to weave in all of your tails, and I do recommend blocking your table runner. You can wet block it and leave it to dry, sort of pat or pin it into place, leave it to dry overnight on a towel, or you can steam block it. And if you need help with either of those techniques, we have helpful tutorials for both of them linked in the description box down below. I I'm pretty pleased with this. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make another one, maybe even two, maybe one in the lemon 24/7 cotton and probably one in the white. I have lemon and white accents all over the place, and I have other painted furniture that is going to need table runners in the very near future. If you really liked this particular table runner pattern, then you might also be interested in our festive table runner. That is another pattern we did a few years ago here on the show. It's also a nice table runner. It's another 2-row repeater, has a really nice border, and that one would look pretty in 24/7 cotton with the same size hook as well, so a 5.5mm hook or an I9. We'll link that in the description box for you down below too. These are nice quick projects, and they really do a lot to just punch up a piece of furniture or just sort of bring a little sort of spring or summer freshness to your home decor. So make a few in different colors and you can change them out. In fact, you know what? This might look nice and red for Christmas, or a rich green or something. I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, a big thanks to Lion Brand Yarns once again for sponsoring today's video, and thank all of you for popping in and spending some time with us here in the crafty house, and we will see you guys soon on the Jayda and Stitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have a great week. Bye guys!
Hi everyone, this is Mama in Stitches. Thank you for watching. Here are a few other videos you might enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can also click the like button and the bell. Thank you, have a wonderful day.